So in our last video, we added rocks into our game, so that now, when we eat a dragonfly, we're getting our points, but if you get hit by a rock, the game ends. So in this one, we're gonna make it a little bit more difficult for us, because right now, we've got one fly and a rock, and most people are gonna be able to just sit here and collect their flies and get a million points and never end the game. That's not very fun, so we're gonna make it a little more difficult. We're going to add a second rock, so that there's two rocks falling at any given moment. It's a little bit harder to avoid them. So we're going to come down here, choose a sprite, and we know we're going to want to use rocks. So we're going to click on rocks, and it adds rocks. Notice it gives it an automatic name of rocks 2, which is perfectly fine for this. This rock is too big. We're going to cut the size in half. Now it's the same. And we're going to want this rock to do the same thing that this rock does. So we're going to come over here, Control C, copy, come back to rock 2, click in the middle. Notice there, our game was running because I clicked on our block. Now it is ended. We're going to click on the white, Control V to paste, and there we go. Now when we run, we've got two rocks. You can see them over here. Their random location got stuck in the same. Now if you notice there, if you caught that, the game ended, but we didn't hear bonk. But rock 2 has the bonk sound. So we want to see what's the difference. Why didn't it do that? I'll tell you what it is. It's this sound tab right here. It doesn't have the bonk sound in it. It only has pop. We don't want pop. It's the default. It always goes in there. So we need to add the bonk sound back into this rock, so that now when we run, it doesn't matter what rock we hit, it will bonk and make our sound for us. So now we've got two rocks, and they are both there and they're both falling, but they went to the same location. They're falling at the same speed. They're always next to each other. There they are on top of each other again. It's very inconsistent, and it just doesn't look good, and it doesn't have a good flow to it. So what we're going to do is when our rock comes to the top, we're going to make it wait there for a certain amount of time. We don't want both rocks, when they start, they're going to both go to the top, and they're both going to start falling immediately, which is going to put them at the same time, and we don't want that. We kind of want them to be staggered. So if we come to our Control tab, we see we have a wait a certain number of seconds. So what we're going to do is put it right up here underneath our set Y and X. So when we click our flag, it's going to set our rocks to the top of the screen, and then it's going to wait however long we say. Now we don't want it to be a set number, because then we'll just run into the same issue just 3 or 5 seconds later, however long we would put it. So we're going to come back into our operators and pick random. So we can set how many seconds we're going to do, 1 to 5. So somewhere between 1 and 5 seconds, then it will jump into the forever, and it will do everything again. Now we don't only want it to wait on the first go as soon as we click go. We want it to wait throughout it. So remember, to copy and paste, you're going to want to grab one block, you separate it a little bit, Control C, Control V, and now we've got another one. We're going to put all this back together, and we want it to wait during the game while it's going. So if we come into our forever while it's always going, we're going to put it back right underneath, same as the top, right underneath our set Y and X. And we're going to have it wait a random number between 1 and 5 seconds again before it shows again and starts falling. So now if we look, so we also want to remember now we have two rocks to deal with, and we only changed the code in one of them. So there's two things you can do. You could come through in this one and you can copy your wait random seconds and put it all back. Or, since we know that both rocks are going to do the same thing, we're just going to grab this that we know is right, We're going to come back over here, get rid of that, get rid of everything here, paste this one back over, and then we've got the same thing on both of them, and now, both notice, rocks went to the top, and they're waiting. Random amount of time. The next rock went to the top, it waited, and now it's dropping. This rock's there, and now it drops. So now, again, you can make your game specific to how you want to make it. You could keep the rocks. When they get to the top, they just sit there and wait. And then they fall. Kind of gives you a heads up as to where they're going to be. But for this tutorial, we're going to make it so you don't know where they're at until they start falling towards you. Which means we need to hide them when they get up here. While they're waiting their random 1 to 5 seconds, we want them to be hidden so that we don't know where they're going to be. So, we're going to come over to our looks and grab a hide. Where are we going to want to put it? Well, when we start, we definitely want to make sure it's hidden because we're going to set it to the X, set the X and Y, and then we're going to wait 1 to 5 seconds. So somewhere before our wait, we want it to be in here. It could be after the X and Y, it could be before. It'll all happen at just about the same time, but we're going to put it right at the top so it's hidden right off the bat. We don't have to worry about it. So we come down and look. We're going to see where else we might want to be hiding it. While it's waiting, it's hidden. And then forever, while we're in here, we're waiting, and it's shown. So here, you look again. It's about the same. When you start, you're going to be doing the same thing in here. So we're going to grab another hide block, and we're going to put it in and hide it as soon as it gets to the bottom, so that then it resets to the top. It's already hidden. It waits 1 to 5 seconds, then it gets shown and comes back into forever and starts falling again on repeat. So let's run it. Notice we still have our other rock. I like to keep everything going. When you're working with the same thing like that, I like to keep it consistent. When we make this one work right, we're going to want to make the other one work right. So we're going to come over here, we're just going to quickly add a couple of hides. We can remember pretty easily, just right with the X and Y's, we're just going to hide them. So now we're going to run it. Now both of our rocks are hidden. And there they are falling. Falling at random times, I get hit, and the game ends. So now our rocks throw some variation into it. Our dragonfly is falling, and our rocks are falling at different paces at different times. So now if you want, you could come through, you could add another rock, you could add 2 more rocks, you could add 3 more rocks, however many you want. It's pretty simple at this point. Now that you have the code, you can just come on over here, Control C, go into rock 3, Control V, rock 4, Control V, and now you've got 4 rocks. Don't forget, they're really big right now, gonna want to change them. Now we've got 4 rocks. When we start, it'll make it a lot more difficult to have the potential of having 4 rocks falling at once. Remember, even I forget sometimes. I forgot here. You added a new rock, you needed to add your sound too. Pretty quick, pretty easy. Just have to remember to do it. Oop, not rock, bonk. If you remember to do it, everything should go smoothly, and you'll be able to expand your game relatively easily. So now we have 4 rocks in this program, and only 1 source of points. So you could add another one if you wanted to. We're going to add 1 more. We're going to come to the Animals tab and see what else we've got. let's have it, we got a beetle right here. We're going to add in a beetle for this one. It's very big. Take the size down. We're going to want the beetle to do the same thing that the dragonfly is doing because it's for points. So we're going to copy the dragonfly, put it into the beetle, make sure our program isn't running before we do anything. Now we have a second beetle. Now, again, we're going to run into the same problem of having multiple rocks. They're both falling at the same time, and you can't get to it. And if you saw that, when we ate the beetle, it disappeared, and it didn't come back. Also, the sound, we're using a sound here, so we need to add our chomp. So that when this beetle gets eaten, it gets chomped. And remember, we don't know how far down it's going to go. So when we start, the beetle comes down, and that's where it stops. So, let's check it out. It gets down to negative 183. So we're going to want to change our beetle's Y position to negative 183, like we did in the previous video. And now, when we run it, the beetle should get to the bottom and start over. Now we're having the same issue with the rocks. They're both falling at the same pace. It's just about the same time. So we're going to want to throw in some weights, just like we did for the rocks. Control, wait, X seconds. We're going to do that right here. Wait before we show. We want a random. 1 to 5 seconds. Remember, we're going to need another wait to go with the other set X and Y before we show. Pick a random number, 1 through 5. Now our beetle has its weights. So we are going to wait. We're going to want to add those to the dragonfly as well. We want one right here. We're going to put one right here before we show. Random number. 1 to 5, 1 to 5. So now, when we click run, once again, notice they're at the top and they're showing before they fall. We don't want that. How did we fix it? Well, we can come look at the rocks. When we start, we hide it. Very simple. Looks, hide. Did we put a hide anywhere else? We can check right here. Yes, we did. Right with the other code. When it hits the bottom, we want to hide it before it goes through all of its steps, setting Y, setting X, waiting 1 to 5 seconds, and then it'll show and start falling again. Got to do it for the beetle as well. Hide at the top. Hide when it hits the bottom. Now, everything should run pretty smoothly. We got a chomp for the beetle. Make sure we get a chomp for the dragonfly. Now, we got hit by a rock and the game ended. Everything stopped, and we're done. So the one last thing that we're going to do for this game is when the frog gets hit by a rock, we're going to want the frog to disappear because the frog died, got squished by a rock, so we don't want him to be there anymore. So to do that, we're going to be in the frog code and we want to see if it's touching any rocks. Because if it is, we're going to want to hide the frog. So come through, grab our if statement, going to check another thing, sensing to see if we're touching. Now, here's where the issue comes in. We've got 4 rocks now in this program. So we need to know if it's touching any of these. So we could sit here and just make 4 of these, change it to rocks 2, rocks 3, rocks 4. We can just link all of those together and do the same thing grab our hide. If it's touching a rock, we want to hide our frog. And we just put that under all of these. Oop, went into the wrong spot. If we sling that in there, this should work just fine. Except at the moment, our frog is hidden, because when we click start, we didn't show it. So if it gets hidden, it's not going to show again. So here we go. We add a show when we start, so we can see our frog, and we can do stuff. Once we get a rock, nothing happens. The reason nothing happens is because we're doing the same thing in two different spots here. For our frog, we're seeing if it's touching a rock, and in our rocks, we're seeing if it's touching the frog. And when the code executes, everything under here and everything in here is going to try to execute at the same time. And for the stop all piece, it'll stop everything before we get the chance for the frog to hide. So a simple fix here, since we're checking to see if it's touching a frog here 4 times in 4 different rock sprites, and then we still have to check in the frog so that we can hide the frog, we have to check 4 times again. So we can simplify this, and we're going to take the touching frog out of all of the rocks. I'm just going to separate it for now, because we're still going to use the code that's there. So we come back to the frog, and we're going to see when it's touching the rocks. Instead of using the bonk sound and stop all here, we're going to copy. We're going to paste it over here so that we can use it in these blocks. Paste it 3 more times so that we can put it down here. And now, all of this code is not needed in each of the rocks. So we simplified the rocks code down to just this little bit. It's just moving the rock to the bottom, when it hits the bottom back to the top, hiding it and showing it, waiting random time for each fall, and it's much less complicated there. So now on the frog, when it's touching any of our rocks, it should hide, play the sound, and stop all. Let's see if it works. So our frog moves, we can grab some points. There comes some rocks. There we go. We didn't get a sound, but that's okay. Once again, very simple. Look at that, pops in there again, and we want bonk. So we put bonk. Now it should work perfectly to where we get our sounds, and our frog disappears, and the game ends. So the other advantage to that is, you remember how we had to add this bonk sound in every single frog? Well, now we don't need it in any of them, because we don't use the bonk sound in the rock code. We only used it in one spot, in the frog. So we only need it right here. Another thing that we can do to make this simpler, we're now looking at this. We took the rock code down from a long line to a pretty simple, pretty easy to follow block of code. This has gotten quite lengthy, and we're doing the same thing in all of these. No matter what rock we're touching, we're hiding, playing a sound, and stopping. So we want to simplify that. So we're going to pull this out and see if there's an easier way for us to do this. We still want to use an if, because we're still checking stuff. But you know what we can use? If we come into this Operators tab, we can use this OR right here. So we can say, if we are touching rocks, or if we're touching rocks 2, then we can hide, play sound, and stop all. Now that's only 2 of them, so we could again simplify it down to where, since we don't need, these 2 are now not needed. We could put these two into a separate if with the same or we can just add an or inside the or. And since we have 4, we're going to want to add one more or. So we've got touching rocks or touching rocks 2 or touching rocks 3 or touching rocks 4. And now these two can be deleted again. And all of that code was turned into one simple if block with a lot of ors inside. But now, no matter what rock the frog touches, it will do the hide, bonk, and the game will end. So something that I noticed here at the end of our game is that when we're working with our rocks, all our rocks are the same right now, but we hide it when we've clicked the flag, but we never show it before it goes into the block. So technically, all of our rocks fall to the ground once before we can even see them. Because if you look, it hides it, sets it to the top, waits its time, and then comes in and starts moving. There's no show anywhere. So we need to make sure we add one of them. In the Looks tab, Show. We want to make sure we show it after we wait some time. So now, after it waits, it'll show and then come into the Forever block, moving down by Y. Come in here, hide it when it hits the bottom, and then re-show repeatedly. This issue is only for the first go, the first fall of the rock. But now, all it is one simple show block, and we're good to go. Make sure you put them into each rock so that they all do the same thing. And then we should be good to go. We'll run it. And now they're falling right at the beginning. Now it feels like there's a much better flow. Now it feels like there's a much better flow.